He thought it would be a regular nighttime classroom visit. But when the Harvard professor entered the classroom at 2 a.m., he saw something no one expected. There was a cleaning lady in the room, but instead of just cleaning, she was solving complex math equations on the blackboard. It was nearly 2 a.m. on an otherwise unremarkable night at Harvard University, an hour when most of the campus lay in silent repose, the only sounds being the distant rustle of wind through centuries-old oaks and the faint hum of a heating system fighting off the chill of early morning autumn. For Professor William Prescott, a distinguished yet quietly introspective member of the mathematics department, these nocturnal hours were his sanctuary. In the stillness of the night, when the cacophony of daily life receded into a distant memory, he found clarity, focus, and the freedom to explore the complexities of his own mind. Tonight, like many before, he was determined to prepare his upcoming lecture, one that he hoped would inspire and illuminate his students the following day. Professor Prescott had always believed that the most profound ideas emerged not in the hustle of daylight, but in the introspective solitude of the early hours. The lecture he was working on dealt with advanced number theory, a subject he regarded as both elegantly simple and maddeningly intricate. He saw beauty in the abstract interplay of primes and patterns, and he longed to share that sense of wonder with his students. As he sat at his mahogany desk in his small, cluttered office, adorned with chalkboards filled with faded equations, he meticulously reviewed proofs and theorems. The pages of his well-worn textbooks, the scribbled notes in the margins, and the delicate diagrams on loose sheets all converged in his mind into a mosaic of mathematical brilliance. Having refined his lecture notes to a near-perfect state, Professor Prescott decided to take a short stroll through the campus to clear his thoughts. He slipped on his worn leather coat, adjusted his glasses, and stepped out into the cool night. The normally bustling corridors of the academic buildings now lay empty, illuminated only by the soft glow of streetlights and the occasional flicker from a distant window. With each measured step, he marveled at the timeless beauty of Harvard's red brick architecture, its stately columns and ivy-draped walls standing as silent guardians of knowledge and history. His journey took him toward one of the large lecture halls, a room that during the day would be brimming with chatter, beaming students, and the enthusiastic murmur of academic debate. Tonight, however, it was his private retreat, a place he intended to visit for one more quiet moment of reflection before retiring to his own quarters. Professor Prescott's mind, still abuzz with ideas and possible refinements for his lecture, wandered through recollections of his own early days as a student. He remembered the nights spent hunched over dusty blackboards, the moments when every equation he solved seemed to unlock a new secret of the universe. The campus, in its nocturnal slumber, felt almost like a living entity, one that held a promise of undiscovered truths, waiting patiently for a curious mind to awaken them. As he approached the familiar door of the lecture hall, he anticipated nothing out of the ordinary. The heavy wooden door was slightly ajar, a commonplace occurrence at such late hours. When custodians had long since finished their rounds, he pushed it gently and stepped inside. The space was vast and echoing, a cavernous room with rows of empty seats and a massive chalkboard that dominated one end of the room. The overhead lights, dimmed to conserve energy, cast long shadows across the polished floor. Today, like every other night when he ventured here, the silence was comforting, a blank canvas upon which he could project the future ideas for his lecture. Professor Prescott made his way to his usual corner seat at the back of the hall, where a small desk and a well-worn armchair provided him with a comfortable refuge for his late-night musings. He set his briefcase down and quietly began to unpack his lecture notes and the latest research he had been poring over. For him, these moments were sacred, when he could indulge fully in the beauty of mathematics without distraction, wrestle with problems that had baffled even the greatest minds, and allow the serenity of the night to sharpen his intellect. Unbeknownst to him, on this particular night, destiny had something unusual in store, though he expected nothing more than the predictable solitude of an empty classroom. As he passed by one of the side corridors leading to the storage area, a faint murmur of activity caught his attention. Initially, he shrugged it off as perhaps the stray sound of a door creaking in the wind, or a remnant of a cleaning shift automatically scheduled late at night. Yet the sound persisted, a quiet rhythmic scratching that seemed almost deliberate, as if it emerged from a mind deeply engaged in thought. Curious, Professor Prescott closed his lecture notebook and followed the sound down the corridor. Each step echoed softly, contradicting the absolute silence he had expected from these hallowed halls in the late hours. His analytical mind wondered if he might be imagining a trick of the acoustics. After all, in such a vast, empty space, even the faintest sound often seemed amplified, playing tricks on one's senses after too many hours of solitary work. He reached a classroom door marked with a faded number that he did not recall using for lectures. Pushing the door open, he was struck by a sight that immediately defied explanation. Standing at the center of the room, in front of a giant blackboard, covered in intricate equations and diagrams that ran from one side to the other, was a young woman no older than 25 with intense focus in her eyes. Instead of simply tidying up or preparing the room for the next day's cleaning, she was furiously scribbling away with chalk, her hand moving with both vigor and graceful precision. For a moment, Professor Prescott froze, his mind struggling to process the surreal scene. He had not expected to find anyone awake in this classroom at such a late hour, least of all someone so engrossed in the art of mathematics. The young woman's work was not the messy scrawl of a casual note-taker, but an elegant, well-organized series of advanced mathematical equations, concepts that he recognized as being at the very frontier of theoretical mathematics. Her approach was almost intuitive. The lines of reasoning that ran across the board were both precise and imaginative, hinting at a mathematician of extraordinary talent quietly operating in the shadows of Harvard's storied halls. In that silent, charged moment, Professor Prescott felt a profound stirring within him, a mixture of shock, admiration, and a touch of incredulity. He had dedicated his life to the discipline, and yet here was a brilliant mind, hidden behind the unassuming guise of a custodian, performing what one might have assumed was a routine cleaning duty. The elegant flow of her equations and the confident strokes of her chalk seemed to belie any notion that she was merely performing a custodial task. Instead, it was as if she were orchestrating an intellectual masterpiece on the canvas of the board, a masterpiece that demanded to be seen and recognized. Without fully understanding why he felt compelled to intrude upon this unexpected spectacle, Professor Prescott stepped quietly into the room, his presence gentle and unassuming. His mind raced with questions. Who was this young woman? How had she come by such profound knowledge? And what secret had led her to spend these silent, solitary hours immersed in the language of mathematics, far removed from the conventional classroom setting? In the dim glow of the overhead lights, with the equations casting intricate shadows upon the walls, one truth began to crystallize in his mind, a truth that would upend many of his long-held beliefs about talent, education, and the unpredictable nature of genius. Unbeknownst to him, this chance encounter was the beginning of a journey that would not only transform his understanding of the potential hidden in the most unassuming corners of society, but would also forge an unexpected bond between a seasoned Harvard professor and a young genius who had been silently nurturing her brilliance outside the bounds of traditional academia. In that quiet classroom, under the watchful eye of history, destiny had taken an unforeseen turn, and Professor Prescott was about to witness the emergence of talent that would change both their lives forever. With his heart pounding and his intellect alight with possibility, Professor Prescott knew that this night, once destined solely for solitary preparation, had become the opening chapter of something much greater. As he observed the young woman work with an almost transcendent focus, he silently vowed to unravel the mystery behind her extraordinary abilities, believing that the brilliance on the board was not a mere happenstance, but a herald of the transformative power of human potential waiting to be discovered. Professor Prescott lingered in the doorway of the lecture hall, his mind still reeling from the unexpected sight before him. In the dim glow of the overhead lights, a young woman barely 25 years old was intently focused on the expansive chalkboard that dominated the front of the room. Rather than sweeping the dust away from the benches or tidying up scattered papers, as one might expect of a custodian in the early hours, she moved with a purpose that transcended the ordinary, her chalk gliding over the board as she unfurled a cascade of complex mathematical equations. At first, the professor's reaction had been one of disbelief. Had his eyes deceived him, he blinked and stepped forward slowly, watching her scribble with an almost artistic precision. Every stroke of her hand conveyed not only deep knowledge but also a passionate commitment to mathematics that was entirely uncharacteristic of someone performing cleaning duties. The room, which had previously been a silent refuge for his late-night contemplations, suddenly seemed to pulse with the energy of an unexpected revelation. Equations that he recognized from the frontier of advanced number theory and abstract algebra covered the board. Integrals, series and theorems punched out in a neat but vigorous handwriting that belied a brilliance both raw and refined. The professor's curiosity deepened as he observed details that further underscored the peculiarity of the moment. The young woman's attire was plain, her dark hair tied back in a functional bun, and a pair of well-worn sneakers completed her unassuming appearance. Yet, the set of eyes fixed steadily on her work conveyed an intensity that few could muster even in the midst of the most demanding academic research. There was something almost meditative about the way she solved these equations, as if every problem on that chalkboard was a dialogue between her inner mind and the elegant logic of mathematics. For several moments, Professor Prescott hesitated in silent awe, defeated by his innate skepticism that a brilliant mind might hide behind such an unremarkable exterior. He recalled his own journey, a lifetime devoted to academia and the relentless pursuit of mathematical beauty, and wondered whether chance or fate had conspired to place this young genius, disguised as a custodian, right under his very nose. The notion was as enchanting as it was bewildering. Here was an outsider effortlessly traversing the highest echelons of mathematical theory without a formally recognized certificate or a prestigious title to her name. Unable to contain his astonishment any longer, the professor approached quietly, careful not to startle her. The soft squeak of leather shoes on the polished floor announced his presence. Still, the young woman did not immediately look up. She appeared so absorbed in the task at hand that even the subtle thud of footsteps had barely disrupted her concentration. Her concentration was almost incandescent, each emblematic symbol that replaced one equation with another painting the board with intricate patterns of numeric poetry. Slowly, as if she sensed that she was no longer alone in the room, she turned her head ever so slightly to glance in his direction. For one suspended heartbeat, their eyes met. Her gaze met his with a blend of mild curiosity and unspoken defiance. There was no hint of alarm or distraction in her eyes, only a serene confidence that transcended the expected roles of campus jobs. Professor Prescott cleared his throat softly, mindful of the delicate balance between intrusion and genuine inquiry. "Excuse me," he began, his voice gentle yet edged with an urgency that betrayed his internal wonder. "I couldn't help but notice what you are doing." He paused as if weighing his words carefully, though the curiosity in his tone was unmistakable. "Your work on these equations, it's remarkable. I've rarely seen someone tackle problems of such sophistication with such ease." At first, the young woman regarded him with a calm, measured expression, as if appraising whether this interruption warranted disrupting her concentrated solitude. Without a hint of defensiveness, she set down her piece of chalk and finally met his gaze fully. There was an unspoken resolve in her eyes, an assurance that what she was doing was both deliberate and meaningful. "Thank you, Professor," she replied, her tone equally calm. "I find that mathematics speaks to the soul in ways few other languages can." Her answer was understated yet profound, hinting at a lifelong passion that had been kindled not in prestigious lecture halls, but perhaps under far humbler circumstances. For a moment, silence reigned as the professor searched her face for clues. How could it be that this young woman, seemingly engaged in the task of cleaning up a deserted classroom, possessed such an innate command of discipline and theory, an art that many seasoned students struggled to master even after years of study. The professor's mind raced. Had he stumbled upon a hidden prodigy, someone whose potential had been relegated to the fringes of society simply because she did not wear the trappings of academic success? It was a notion so absurd and yet so tantalizing that he felt compelled to learn more about this enigmatic individual. Encouraged by her sincere yet modest response, Professor Prescott took a seat on one of the backbenches, insisting on watching her continue her work for a while longer. As she resumed her careful notation on the board, he observed not only the clarity of her logic, but also the intuitive leaps she made, an approach to problem-solving that contrasted sharply with the algorithmic methods taught in conventional classrooms. He recalled the countless hours he had devoted to perfecting proofs and calculations, and he couldn't shake the sense that he was witnessing something extraordinary, a genuine spark of insight that defied the constraints of formal education. The moment stretched on, heavy with possibilities. For the professor, an esteemed scholar from one of the world's most prestigious institutions, this encounter was unprecedented. The sight of such raw talent and unbridled intellectual passion emerged from the shadows of service work struck him profoundly. He wondered if, in some twist of fate, the cosmos had conspired to remind him that brilliance often comes in unexpected forms, hidden in those society might overlook because they do not fit preconceived notions of who a mathematician should be. As the night waxed deeper and the soft chalk dust wove itself into the fabric of the quiet classroom, Professor Prescott resolved that he must speak with this remarkable young woman, not merely to compliment her extraordinary aptitude, but to discover the story behind her presence here at such an unusual hour, an inquiry that promised to challenge his deeply ingrained views on talent, opportunity, and the recognized genius that might dwell in the unlikeliest of souls. In that silent, enchanted classroom, as equations continued to bloom on the chalkboard, like intricate constellations, a subtle transformation began. The professor's world, so long ordered by the strict hierarchies of academia, was on the brink of reconsidering its own definitions of excellence. What he had encountered was more than a cleaning shift or a casual moment of idle scribbling. It was a testament to the enduring truth that genius knows no bounds. And in that moment of quiet revelation, both Professor Prescott and the young, unassuming woman embarked on a journey that promised to redefine the boundaries of what it meant to be a scholar in a modern world. The quiet atmosphere in the lecture hall was suddenly transformed into a private symposium of unexpected genius, as Professor Prescott, heart still pounding from the shock of the scene, stepped further into the room. His presence was gentle yet insistent as he approached the young woman who had so completely captivated his attention. With deliberate care, he cleared his throat and said, "Excuse me, miss. I couldn't help but notice the remarkable work you're doing here." His words echoed softly against the white backdrop of the chalkboard, adorned with intricate equations. The young woman paused, her chalk hovering in midair, and slowly turned to meet his gaze. Her eyes, a steady, luminous blue, held neither surprise nor fear, only a quiet focus and a hint of curiosity. "Good evening, Professor. I'm sorry if I've disturbed your preparation," she replied in a measured tone that was both respectful and confident. Professor Prescott's features softened as he observed her calm demeanor. "Disturbed me? Not at all," he assured her. "What you are doing here is nothing short of extraordinary. I was preparing my lecture for tomorrow and expected only silence. Instead, I find myself witnessing a display of advanced mathematics in progress. May I ask, who are you?" The young woman smiled gently, as if she had long anticipated this conversation. "My name is Evelyn," she said simply. "I work here as part of the cleaning staff, but I've always found solace in mathematics. It's been my passion since childhood." Her voice held a quiet, almost lyrical quality, as if each word were imbued with the fervor of a lifelong devotion. Professor Prescott leaned closer, his interest piqued. "Passion, you say? I must confess, Evelyn, that your work on these equations suggests an intuition far beyond what I would expect from someone with a conventional background. May I see your work more closely?" He gestured toward the sprawling array of formulas that danced across the board, a tapestry of mathematical theory ranging from non-linear differential equations to elegant integral solutions reminiscent of the finest proofs in real analysis. Evelyn traced her fingers over the chalk-dusted surface before responding. "I have always been drawn to the beauty of numbers and patterns," she explained softly. "I taught myself mathematics through old textbooks and online courses. My evenings are spent solving problems that I find both challenging and deeply fulfilling." She paused, her eyes flickering with passion. "I've never had a formal education in mathematics. Life has taken me on many unexpected journeys, and working here at Harvard allows me to be close to the world of ideas, even if it is only at a distance." Professor Prescott marveled at her candor. "And yet, your grasp of the subject is both rigorous and intuitive. Look at the manner in which you've approached this problem here. Your steps are logical, yet you've allowed for creative leaps that many of my best students would struggle to conceive." He motioned at a particularly elegant series of derivations that intertwined conjecture with proof, a synthesis that he recognized as the hallmark of genuine mathematical artistry. Evelyn's eyes softened at his praise, though a trace of uncertainty lingered. "It is not so much that I seek accolades," she replied, "but that I simply cannot help but wonder about the universe in a way that numbers help me articulate. Mathematics has always been a language through which I understand the world. Even if I do not have a degree, I have read and studied diligently, piece by piece, using every resource available to me." Her words resonated deeply with Professor Prescott. "Evelyn, I have spent decades studying these very subjects, and I have encountered few who work with such intuitive clarity without the benefit of formal training. It seems to me that talent is not measured solely by academic pedigree, but by the passion and ingenuity one applies in the quest for knowledge." He paused, his mind racing through memories of his own days as a young student, when the allure of mathematics was an intimate, personal revelation rather than an expected milestone in a structured curriculum. Encouraged by his sincere admiration, Evelyn hesitated for only a moment before continuing. "I've always believed that the language of mathematics is universal. It transcends social status and formal titles. Every time I see an equation, I feel as if I'm uncovering a small secret of the cosmos. Working as a custodian here provides me with the quiet hours I need to explore these secrets, even if they are only shared with these walls and you, Professor." Her smile was wistful, carrying the weight of a dream that had long been confined to fragments of self-taught lessons and solitary study sessions. Professor Prescott found himself both humbled and inspired by her revelation. "Evelyn, you must realize that you possess something truly exceptional, a raw, unbridled genius that deserves to be nurtured, not tucked away in the background of a campus. I cannot help but wonder if your talents would flourish even more under the right guidance and academic support." His tone was earnest, laden with both the authority of a professor and the genuine hope of a mentor. The quiet exchange was punctuated by the soft scratch of chalk on the board and the distant hum of a refrigerator in a nearby hallway. In that moment, as the two souls, one seasoned by years of academic pursuit and the other fueled by an unquenchable pure love for numbers, stood together in the hushed sanctum of the learning space, a bridge of possibility was silently constructed between them. It was a bridge built on mutual respect, the shared language of logical beauty, and the realization that genius can emerge from the most unexpected quarters. Evelyn's eyes, now filled with a cautious optimism, met the professor's gaze with anticipation. "Are you suggesting that perhaps I could be given an opportunity to study, to further develop my skills within the university?" she asked, her tone a blend of hope and trepidation. Professor Prescott's smile was slow and warm. "Indeed, I am. Talent, such as yours, should not remain dormant. There is a world of knowledge waiting for you here, and I believe you have much to contribute not only to the field of mathematics, but to the broader academic community. I would be honored to help you explore this path, if you are willing, of course." His gaze was both reassuring and challenging, inviting her to step beyond the boundaries that had confined her self-taught pursuits. For a long, silent moment, the weight of their conversation hung between them. Evelyn's heart pounded as the possibility of entering into a world she had only observed from afar began to seem real. The professor's words were like a lifeline, affirming that her quiet brilliance was not mere daydreaming, but a gift that could redefine her future. In that hushed classroom, where equations danced in delicate harmony and the promise of uncharted intellectual terrains glowed softly in the dim light, the encounter became the turning point. Both professor and student recognized that fate had crafted this unlikely meeting for a reason: to challenge preconceptions about learning, to honor the relentless human spirit that seeks understanding regardless of circumstance, and ultimately to transform not only an individual life, but the very fabric of academia itself. And so, as the night deepened and the relics of old chalk dust whispered secrets of eras past, Professor Prescott and Evelyn began a conversation that would mark the commencement of an extraordinary journey, one in which talent, nurtured by passion and unburdened by convention, would triumph over every stereotype, and where a humble custodian might soon become a beacon of intellectual brilliance at Harvard University. In the hush of that transformative night, when the conversation had woven possibility into the silence of the lecture hall, Professor Prescott knew that mere words would not suffice. The air between him and Evelyn, her gentle yet piercing gaze, still radiant with a quiet confidence, seemed to invite a deeper inquiry into her remarkable mind. With the soft hum of the overhead lights and the lingering scent of chalk dust, he took a seat in front of the scattered notations on the board, preparing himself to delve into the intricacies of her understanding. "Evelyn," he began, his tone measured yet eager, "if you truly see mathematics as a language to understand the world, would you care to solve another problem with me?" He retrieved a piece of chalk and, with the practiced precision of a scholar, began inscribing a particularly challenging equation along one corner of the board. The equation was a blend of non-linear differential equations and abstract algebraic structures, a familiar problem he had once wrestled with during his own years as a graduate student. "Consider this," he said, stepping back so that the formulation was clear. "We have an equation of the form this y pull p x y v q x y nen, where px and qx are continuous on a given interval. Could you outline how you would approach finding its general solution?" Evelyn's eyes lit up as she observed the problem, her gaze darting over each symbol as if reading an intensely personal message. After a brief pause, one that seemed to stretch for an eternity in that quiet room, she picked up a teacher's marker from a desk conveniently left by a departing student. With smooth, confident strokes, she circled the terms and began discussing her approach. "First," she explained softly, "I would consider transforming the equation into a linear form by a suitable substitution if n is not equal to 1. In cases where n is 1, it's a first-order linear differential equation, so we simply multiply by the integrating factor mu x ev." Her hands moved fluidly along the board as she derived the integrating factor and showed how the left-hand side could be written as a derivative of mu x y. Each step was executed with clarity and precision that belied her unorthodox path into mathematics. Professor Prescott watched, both astonished and deeply moved, as Evelyn continued. With each logical leap, she explained how, in more complicated scenarios, if n were not equal to 1, the equation could be reduced to a Bernoulli form, and then, after an appropriate substitution, solved like any standard linear differential equation. "It is as though you see through the layers of this problem, stripping it down to its fundamental structure," he murmured, unable to hide the admiration in his tone. Emboldened by his praise, Evelyn proceeded to demonstrate even deeper insights. She began sketching a brief outline of connections between the solution method and certain invariances in the equation. Her style was intuitive and organic. She recalled a theorem of existence and uniqueness not from memory of textbooks, but rather through a series of logical deductions that flowed naturally from her self-taught studies. "The key," she explained quietly, her voice steady and sure, is to recognize that the integrating factor not only brings order to the differential equation, but also hints at an underlying symmetry in the solution space. This symmetry, in turn, can guide us in predicting the behavior of solutions without necessarily solving the entire system explicitly. Professor Prescott's eyes glistened as he absorbed each word. Here was a mind that had silently labored through countless hours of self-guided learning, now articulating advanced concepts with the fluidity of a seasoned academic. "Evelyn," he said, leaning forward with an enthusiasm that betrayed his decades of teaching, "what you have just explained not only covers the standard method but expands it with a level of depth that many formal graduates struggle to achieve. Your reasoning is both creative and rigorous." Sensing that the conversation had reached a rare apex of mutual understanding, he decided to test her further. Pointing to another section of the board already filled with her earlier scribbles on a seemingly unrelated set of problems, he asked, "Could you interpret how these two seemingly disparate approaches might be unified under a common theoretical framework? For instance, how might the invariance principles in differential equations relate to symmetry groups in transformation theory?" It was a question that bridged two advanced fields, analysis and abstract algebra, normally reserved for doctoral dissertations. Evelyn paused, considering every nuance before replying. "In many ways, the two branches are reflections of the same underlying reality. When we look at invariance in differential equations, we are searching for operations that leave the solution set unchanged. This is analogous to looking for symmetry groups in transformation theory, where each group element corresponds to a transformation that preserves structure. Essentially, the existence of an integrating factor hints at an invariant measure. The invariance under a certain class of substitutions or transformations is what links the differential equation to the concept of a Lie group, which in turn governs continuous symmetries. Her explanation was confident and filled with a fresh perspective, a perspective honed outside ramified academic corridors, yet rich with insights that resonated with established theory. For a long moment, silence fell over the small audience of one, the professor and the determined young mind before him. Professor Prescott's chest swelled, not only with academic pride, but with a personal revelation. Traditional credentials were a poor measure of true understanding. Here, in this quiet classroom at 2AM, Evelyn transcended the ordinary barriers of social status and educational background. Her brilliance was raw and unfettered by convention, a testament that genius in mathematics could arise in the most unanticipated settings. "Your explanation," Professor Prescott said with quiet passion, "shows that what truly matters in mathematics is not where you come from, but how deeply you understand its language. You've demonstrated a mastery that exceeds most of our enrolled students and even some of our most accomplished scholars." His words, filled with genuine admiration, seemed to hang in the air like an incantation of possibility. In that transformative moment, as the intricate equations on the board bore witness to an unrecognized genius, Professor Prescott made a silent vow. He realized that the Academy must nurture every spark of talent, especially those that emerge from the margins, where innovation can flourish unchecked by prejudice. The evidence before him was irrefutable. Evelyn not only understood the problems on the board, she had reinvented them with imaginative solutions. And in doing so, she had subtly redefined what it meant to be brilliant. Thus, as the night deepened even further and the hush of the sleeping campus wrapped around them, the professor resolved to take the next step. The confirmation of Evelyn's abilities was more than a personal revelation. It was a clarion call to the institution. He would ensure that her talent be recognized and cultivated. In that luminous moment, as chalk dust swirled in the quiet beam of light, both professor and prodigy sensed that their lives, and perhaps the very fabric of their academic community, were about to change forever. The quiet after their profound exchange seemed to hold its breath, as though the room itself awaited the natural next step in this unfolding transformation. Professor Prescott, still absorbing the raw brilliance of Evelyn's mind and the graceful manner in which she wielded mathematical language, felt a stirring of responsibility and inspiration. He knew then that her talents, hidden too long beneath an unassuming exterior, would be squandered if left unacknowledged. It was time to shift from admiration to active support. a decisive moment that would forever alter both their lives. After the chalk dust had settled, the professor gently set the marker aside and moved closer to Evelyn. "You have an extraordinary gift," he said, his voice imbued with sincere conviction. "It would be a disservice both to you and to this institution if such talent remained unrecognized." His gaze, kind yet piercing, met hers as he continued. "I believe that those responsible for nurturing genius must step forward, even if it means challenging traditional expectations. You, Evelyn, deserve the opportunity to study mathematics at Harvard formally." Evelyn's eyes widened as she absorbed his words. For a long, suspended moment, she was silent, her internal world awash with a mixture of disbelief, cautious hope but inevitably the weight of self-doubt. "Professor," she began haltingly, I have never been in an academic setting like this. I am just a custodian by title, though my heart has always belonged to numbers and equations. How could someone like me possibly fit in among formally trained scholars?" Her voice trembled with vulnerability, reflecting both her passion and the years she had spent learning in isolation, unaccompanied by the expected trappings of academic credentials. Professor Prescott smiled gently at her concern and stepped up, lowering his voice into a reassuring, almost conspiratorial tone. "Evelyn, the beauty of mathematics is that its language is universal, and its truth does not depend on one's past or social standing. I have seen countless students, armed with the privilege of rigorous education, struggle with the fundamentals that you seem to grasp naturally. Your approach is not only innovative, but also refreshingly authentic. In our academic community, we cherish inquiry and brilliance above all else. Do not let your modest beginnings or your current role define your potential." He motioned toward the expansive chalkboard, still adorned with her elegant equations, and continued, "Let this board be a testament to your capacity to think critically and creatively. I propose that you consider applying for admission as a non-traditional student. Harvard welcomes those who demonstrate exceptional promise, regardless of their academic pedigree. With my recommendation and your hard-earned self-taught knowledge, you have every chance to excel." Evelyn listened intently, her mind darting between memories of nights spent poring over second-hand textbooks and online lectures, and a sudden, unexpected possibility, a formal path into the very institution she had admired from afar. "It seems so surreal," she murmured, almost to herself, "as if I have been living on the fringes of a world of ideas, and now it's inviting me in." Her skepticism, however, mingled with a flicker of excitement, for she was acutely aware that this was a world she had only dared to imagine in secret. Noticing her hesitancy, Professor Prescott leaned in closer, his words infused with the assurance of a mentor who had witnessed many transformative moments in his long career. "Your doubts are natural, Evelyn, but let me ask you this. Have you ever allowed fear or uncertainty to dim the flame of a discovery? The path of scholarship is paved with challenges, yes, but it is also illuminated by passion and curiosity. I promise you that here you will find comrades who respect dedication more than credentials, and professors who value insight above what is written on a resume. We are all, in a sense, perpetual students in the vast discipline of learning." The sincerity in his tone cut through her reservations like a beam of light. Slowly, the notion of transferring her passion from the fringes into a structured environment began to take shape in her mind. She recalled the countless problems she had solved alone, the secret thrill of unraveling the mysteries of mathematics beneath dim lamplight, and the relentless drive that had kept her going despite the odds. "I have always wanted to learn more formally," she whispered, her voice growing steadier as she allowed herself to entertain the possibility. "If you truly believe that I have what it takes, then perhaps I should try." Professor Prescott extended his hand toward her, a gesture symbolizing not only a physical offering, but the promise of a new beginning. "Evelyn, I will support your application to the university. Write a personal recommendation that reflects your achievements and potential, and help you navigate the process. I assure you, once you step into the halls of learning, you will find that your perspective, shaped by real-life autodidactic experience, is exactly the kind of fresh insight we need. Talent like yours, is exactly what transforms institutions. The quiet room now seemed to buzz with a tangible energy, as if the very air recognized the gravity of this turning point. Evelyn hesitated for a beat longer, absorbing the weight of his words and the reality of the opportunity before her. With a trembling yet determined nod, she accepted his offer. "I will do it, Professor Prescott," she said softly. "I'll try to apply, and I'll do my best, no matter how daunting it seems." A wave of relief and affirmation passed between them. In that moment, the disparity between their worlds, so vast in appearances, faded into insignificance, replaced by the shared language of mathematics and an unyielding passion for discovery. The professor's faith in her talent, coupled with her own burning desire to learn, created a spark that promised to defy convention. As the night wore on and the quiet classroom bore witness to this intimate pact of possibility, both professor and prodigy realized that this was not merely an invitation to academic study. It was the commencement of a journey toward reimagining who is deemed capable of greatness. In the silent passion of that moment, a new chapter in Evelyn's life was set in motion. A future where the boundaries of background and title were no longer obstacles, but mere details in the grand equation of human potential. In the days following that transformative conversation, the weight of possibility pressed heavily upon Evelyn's heart. The promise offered by Professor Prescott was no longer a mere glimmer of hope. It had evolved into a tangible challenge, a call to leave behind the comfortable obscurity of her routine and step into a world where formal education and self-made genius intertwined. Every night since that fateful 2AM encounter, as she returned to her modest quarters after cleaning her shift, her mind buzzed with visions of lectures, bustling classrooms, and the profound mathematics that had always been her secret love. The professor's invitation had lit a spark, one that refused to be quenched by self-doubt or the limitations of her past. In the early morning light of a crisp autumn day, Evelyn sat at a battered desk in her small apartment, surrounded by a medley of used textbooks, handwritten notes, and scribbled diagrams, the tangible remnants of her lifelong self-study. Determined and trembling with a mixture of fear and anticipation, she began drafting her personal statement for Harvard's non-traditional applicant program. Every word she wrote was a declaration of her journey, the nights spent poring over mathematics in solitude, the moments of quiet triumph when complex equations finally revealed their secrets, and the painful acknowledgement that talent can be nurtured in the most unexpected niches. Evelyn's statement was raw and honest. She recalled how, as a young person, she had discovered her love for numbers in second-hand library books and free online courses. Resources that, although limited in scope, ignited an insatiable hunger for knowledge. The pages bore witness to the countless hours she dedicated to unraveling the mysteries of calculus and abstract algebra, often accompanied only by the soft hum of her modest space heater and the rhythmic ticking of an old clock. Every frustration and every breakthrough was laid bare in her narrative, a testament to the resilience required to forge a path without a formal academic pedigree. Throughout that period, Professor Prescott became her steadfast ally. He visited her modest apartment more than once, bringing with him not only his wise counsel, but also examples of academic literature and insights into the rigorous application process. Late evenings were spent side by side at a cramped kitchen table, where he patiently explained the intricacies of standardized test formats, discussed the subtleties of academic reference letters, and reassured her that true brilliance needed no formal crown. "Your story," he would say gently, "is the kind that transforms institutions. The world's greatest ideas often arise where they are least expected." Evelyn began to prepare for the entrance examinations that would test her readiness for Harvard's challenging curriculum. Although she was self-taught, the rigor of a multi-hour exam in advanced mathematics, logical reasoning, and even short essays was an entirely new arena. She scoured every available resource, online practice tests, archived questions from past examinations, and even attended free workshops at the local community college. Each equation she solved under timed conditions sharpened her determination. Each error made her more resilient. The process was grueling, but every challenge was a stepping stone, a way to validate the wealth of knowledge she had accumulated despite the absence of a formal mentor in a classroom setting. The day of the exam arrived with a mixture of anxious energy and quiet resolve. Dressed in a second-hand blouse and neatly ironed trousers, Evelyn entered the examination hall with her heart pounding. Had she the courage to face a room filled with applicants whose lives had been vastly different from her own? As she settled into a chair amidst a sea of hopeful faces, the memory of that night in the lecture hall, when the equations on the chalkboard had danced before her eyes, kept her focused. Every problem on the test became not just a challenge to be met, but a reaffirmation of her identity as an unrecognized genius. Hours later, as she submitted her answer sheet, she felt both exhausted and exhilarated, knowing that she had given voice to her passion in the most honest, unadulterated way possible. Days turned into anxious weeks as the university reviewed her application and tested her results. Professor Prescott's unwavering support and his impassioned letters of recommendation reached the admissions committee, interwoven with the data from her exam performance. Then, one brisk winter morning, an official envelope arrived bearing the distinguished seal of Harvard University. With trembling fingers, Evelyn opened it and read the words that would forever alter her life. She had been accepted as a non-traditional student, her admission granted in recognition of both her self-taught mastery and her demonstrable intellectual potential. The response was instantaneous and overwhelming. Tears streamed down her face in the quiet sanctity of her small living room, the significance of the acceptance sinking deep into her soul. It was as if each syllable of that acceptance letter vibrated with the promise that her life, once confined to shadows and solitary study, would now pulse with the brilliance of a newfound academic community. Friends she had made in passing at the university, the custodians, the security staff, even fellow night watchmen became her first champions. News of her unusual admission spread quietly at first, then with growing amazement among academic circles, where Professor Prescott was a respected figure. Some whispered that Harvard had once again proven its belief in the power of genius emerging from the most unassuming circumstances. As Evelyn prepared to join the hallowed halls of one of the world's foremost academic institutions, she found that the journey was not merely about acquiring formal credentials, it was a metamorphosis of self-perception. The relentless hours of struggle had not been in vain. They had prepared her for a future where her work could finally be recognized as a contribution to the very discipline she loved. Her integration into the university was marked by moments of awe and supportive camaraderie. In orientation sessions, she listened intently to advanced seminars, her questions thoughtful and probing, her insights reflecting not the polished veneer of a scholar born into academia, but the raw, experiential wisdom of someone who had clawed their way from the margins into brilliance. Within the first few months, Evelyn's presence began to spark discussions among her professors and peers alike. Her perspective, unfiltered by the conventional rigors of academic training, challenged established paradigms and breathed fresh life into seminars and problem-solving sessions. Professor Prescott watched with a fierce, paternal pride as she navigated the demands of coursework, collaborated in study groups, and tackled research problems with an ingenuity that surpassed expectations. A sense of vindication filled him, for his belief in her, from that fateful night in the lecture hall, had been validated by the transformative power of her determination and intellect. In time, Evelyn became more than just a symbol of unrecognized talent. She was a catalyst for change within the department. Her success and tireless work ethic encouraged the faculty to look beyond traditional credentials and embrace diverse backgrounds and unconventional learning paths. Meetings were held where her insights were solicited on new teaching methods that could capture the essence of true mathematical inquiry, that beauty which she herself had so fiercely pursued. Her journey from a quiet custodian working in the dead of night to a celebrated student at Harvard became an inspiring narrative, one that served as a beacon to others who dared to dream of a better life, regardless of the constraints imposed by circumstance. Thus, in the wake of her decision to trust her own abilities and challenge convention, Evelyn embarked on an academic journey marked by resilience, discovery, and quiet triumph. The acceptance letter was not merely an invitation to study, it was a call to rethink the boundaries of intellect, a reminder that within the seemingly ordinary lies extraordinary potential waiting to be nurtured. With each step on her new path, she carried not only the hope of personal success, but also the transformative promise of a future where every brilliant mind, no matter its origin, could shine in the luminous halls of learning. In the months that followed, the quiet corridors of Harvard underwent a subtle, almost imperceptible transformation. The breakthrough encounter had long since become more than a serendipitous meeting between a seasoned professor and an unrecognized mathematical prodigy. It had ignited a revolution in perspective. As the autumn leaves yielded to winter's crisp austerity, Evelyn's transition from a humble custodian with a secret gift to a formally admitted student at Harvard became a symbol of hope that true brilliance transcends conventional boundaries. After her acceptance, Evelyn immersed herself in the rigorous life of academia with unwavering determination. Every lecture, every seminar, and every group study session felt like a step toward the future she had always quietly envisioned. Though some of her peers initially viewed her unconventional background with a hint of skepticism, it was undeniably her innovative approach to problem solving and her intuitive grasp of abstract concepts that set her apart. In dynamic discussions on differential equations, abstract algebra, and the elegant interplay between symmetry and invariance, she not only held her own, but often led her classmates to novel insights. Her contributions in class discussions began reshaping curricular debates. Faculty members, once accustomed only to traditional candidates, started to re-examine the rigid prerequisites of the discipline, inspired by Evelyn's ability to synthesize ideas from her self-taught journey with the foundational principles of formal mathematics. Professor Prescott continued to serve as her mentor, a steadfast guide, steering her through the labyrinth of advanced theory and academic rigor. Late-night study sessions in the dim glow of the campus library transformed into spirited explorations of deep mathematical problems and inventive proofs. In one memorable instance, during a collaborative research project on nonlinear dynamics, Evelyn's insight into the hidden symmetries of a complex system led to breakthrough findings that not only impressed her mentors, but also earned her a co-authorship on a research paper destined for publication in a prestigious journal. Her success resonated far beyond the pages of that article. It catalyzed open discussions about the potential for non-traditional learning experiences to produce innovative results that sometimes even surpass those cultivated through standard curricula. As her reputation grew, Evelyn was frequently invited to present her work at departmental seminars and even intercollegiate conferences. Every time she stepped onto the stage, she carried not only her undeniable intellectual prowess, but also the inspiring narrative of her journey. For many in the academic community who had once assumed that rigor and scholarship were the exclusive domains of those who had followed the conventional path from an early age, her rise was a clarion call for inclusivity. Faculty began adopting more flexible admission practices, and administration officials organized scholarships and mentoring programs geared towards unorthodox talents. Evelyn's story became a living, breathing case study in overcoming societal barriers, a reminder that true genius is often cloaked in unexpected forms. Simultaneously, whispers of her transformation reached beyond the ivy-clad walls of academic circles. Local media outlets and national publications began to celebrate her as an emblem of perseverance and intellectual passion. Feature articles highlighted how, at 2:30 a.m. in an empty classroom, destiny had staged an encounter that would shatter conventional academic hierarchies. Interviews with Professor Prescott underscored the profound belief that talent could be found in the most unanticipated places. In campus discussions, debate sessions, and even informal gatherings in the faculty lounge, the story of Evelyn, the custodian turned scholar, was recounted with reverence and renewed hope that academic excellence is not limited to those possessing a polished resume. Her experiences not only redefined the essence of learned potential, but also instilled in others a fierce resolve to look beyond superficial labels. Throughout this journey, Evelyn herself experienced an evolution that was as personal as it was academic. With every theorem mastered and every problem solved, she shed layers of self-doubt accumulated over years of isolation. The once humble custodial role, which had provided her a haven where she could indulge in her secret passion for mathematics, now became merely one chapter in her expansive narrative. Surrounded by peers who recognized her for more than her past circumstances, she discovered that the language of mathematics was not just a set of symbols and equations, it was a vehicle for transformation. Her newfound education opened doors to collaborative projects, international symposiums, and even initiatives aimed at bridging educational gaps for those from underrepresented backgrounds. As spring arrived, with cherry blossoms blooming across the campus quadrangles, Evelyn's triumphant journey reached a symbolic crescendo. At the closing ceremony of an academic symposium dedicated to innovative research in mathematics, she delivered an impassioned speech that left the audience spellbound. She recounted her story not as one of grievance, but as a testament to resilience, authenticity, and the transformative power of self-belief. Our potential is not defined by the labels we inherit or the circumstances we are handed, she declared with quiet conviction. Genius, when nurtured, can flourish anywhere, from the quiet corners of a cleaning closet to the grand lecture halls of one of the world's most esteemed universities. Her words resonated deeply with every listener, reminding them that every individual, regardless of background or social status, carries the spark of brilliance waiting to be ignited. In that moment of public triumph, Professor Prescott looked on with fulfillment and pride, not only for the academic milestones his protégé had achieved, but for the profound impact her story had on changing perceptions. The journey that began during a silent, solitary night had blossomed into a vivid reimagining of what it meant to be educated, talented, and human. Evelyn's triumph was a victory not just for her, but for all who dare to dream beyond the restrictive definitions imposed by tradition. And so, as the applause echoed through the hall, and the future beckoned with open possibilities, Evelyn embraced her new horizon, a path defined by continuous learning, dynamic discovery, and the unwavering belief that genius is not confined by circumstance. Her story, a living testament to the power of opportunity and relentless determination, became an enduring reminder. In every heart lies the potential for greatness, waiting to be recognized and nurtured by those brave enough to believe in the unlikeliest of dreams. This is a story that reminds us, no matter our beginnings, every person has the potential to achieve greatness if we dare to follow our passion and trust our inner genius.